I found the inactivated debit card on the kitchen counter 3 days after Mom left, and that's when I knew I was going to die. My name is Emma Foster. I'm 11 years old, and I'm going to tell you exactly what happened when my mother decided I was old enough to survive on my own for 30 days. But first, you need to understand something. This isn't a story about adventure, or independence, or learning to be brave. This is about what happens when the person who's supposed to protect you decides that her vacation matters more than your life. The morning Mom left, she didn't even sit me down. She just rolled her suitcase into the kitchen where I was eating cereal and said, "I'm going to France with Richard for a month. You're mature for your age. It's time to prove it." I remember the spoon frozen halfway to my mouth. "A whole month?" I asked slowly. "But Mom, I'm 11. "Exactly," she answered. "When I was 11, I was practically raising myself." She pulled out her wallet and placed a $50 bill on the counter with a theatrical flourish, like she was handing me a treasure map. Then came the debit card. Blue plastic with her name on it. "Emergency money," she said. "Don't use it unless you absolutely have to." "What about food?" I asked desperately. "There's plenty in the pantry. You're a smart girl, Emma. Figure it out." She kissed the top of my head, and her perfume made my eyes water. "This is going to be good for you. You'll see." And just like that, she was gone. The front door closed, followed by the sound of the lock clicking. I sat there with my soggy cereal thinking, maybe this was a test. Maybe she'd come back in an hour laughing, saying she was just seeing if I'd panic. But then her car started, and the sound of her engine faded down our street. The house suddenly felt enormous and hollow, like I'd been swallowed by something huge and empty. I want you to understand what $50 means when you're alone. It means 7 small meals if you're careful. It means choosing between bread and milk because you can't afford both. It means standing in the corner store doing math in your head while the cashier watches you count quarters, and you can feel their judgment like a weight on your shoulders. The first day wasn't so bad. I made a peanut butter sandwich for lunch. Then later found some crackers for dinner. The house was quiet, but I told myself quiet was peaceful. I did my homework at the kitchen table before taking a shower and getting into bed. But I couldn't sleep. I found myself staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of her car in the driveway. Sadly, it never came. Day 2. I tried the debit card at the convenience store on the corner. I needed milk. The cereal was going stale and I thought milk might make it better. The cashier was this tired-looking man with gray in his beard. He swiped the card. "Declined." "Try again," I said in my small childish voice. He swiped it 3 more times. Each beep of rejection felt like a tiny door slamming. "The card's not activated. You got cash, little girl." I nodded and bought the milk with $8 from my 50. Walked home with it clutched against my chest. Got back to the house and went straight to the junk drawer where Mom keeps important papers. That's where I found the card activation instructions still in the envelope, unstamped, unsent. She'd given me a useless piece of plastic and called it emergency money. That night I started the notebook. Just a cheap composition book I found in my school supplies. I wrote the date at the top of the first page and then wrote, Day 2. Mom left me with a card that doesn't work. I have $42 left. The milk was past its expiration date, but I bought it anyway. I didn't know then that this notebook would save my life. I just knew I needed to remember. I needed proof that this was real, that I wasn't crazy for feeling scared. By day 5, the $50 was gone. All of it spent on the cheapest food I could find, white bread, off-brand peanut butter, and ramen noodles that cost 39 cents a pack. I'd gotten good at making one meal stretch across an entire day. Breakfast was half a sandwich. Lunch was the other half. Dinner was ramen with exactly half the flavor packet because I would need the rest for tomorrow. The hunger wasn't like missing a meal. It was this constant hollow ache that made my hands shake when I tried to write. It made me dizzy in third period math when I stood up too fast. It also made me cold all the time, even though it was September and still warm outside. At school, I became invisible. I sat in the back of every class with my hood up, arms wrapped around my stomach. Nobody noticed. Or if they did, they certainly didn't care. Middle school is like that. Everyone's so worried about their own problems that you can be disappearing right in front of them and they'll just step over you to get to lunch. But Miss Patterson noticed. She was my homeroom teacher, The kind of woman who wore bright cardigans and kept a candy jar on her desk that she insisted was for emergencies only, which really meant whenever she felt like it. On day 6, I fell asleep during silent reading. Just dropped my head on the desk and vanished into this black, dreamless space where I didn't have to feel hunger. I woke up to her hand on my shoulder. The classroom was empty. The bell had rung and I'd somehow slept through it. "Emma." Her voice was soft but firm. "Honey, are you feeling okay?" I sat up fast, wiping drool from my cheek. "I'm fine. Just stayed up late studying." She didn't believe me. I could see it in the way her eyes narrowed, the way she glanced at my backpack like she was cataloging everything I wasn't saying. "Have you eaten lunch today?" "I'm not hungry," I said quickly. The lie came out automatic, polished from repetition. "Emma." She pulled up a chair and sat across from me, which somehow made it worse. For an adult to sit, then you know it was serious. It meant they were settling in for a conversation you didn't want to have. I've been teaching for 15 years. I know what a kid looks like when something's wrong at home. My throat got tight as I struggled to reply. "Nothing's wrong. My mom's just busy with work." "When's the last time you had a real meal?" The question hit me like a punch. When was the last time actually? I found myself thinking. Before Mom left, probably. A real meal with protein and vegetables and enough food that I didn't have to think about whether I'd be hungry again in 3 hours. I couldn't remember. But I surely couldn't say that. So instead, I looked Ms. Patterson in the eye and said, "I need to get to 4th period, I said, standing up too fast. The room tilted, and I grabbed the desk to steady myself. Ms. Patterson stood too, and there was something in her face that scared me more than the hunger. Concern. Deep, real concern that meant she might actually do something about this. "I'm going to call your mother today, Emma. Just to check in. She's traveling for work. She won't answer. Then I'll leave a message." She handed me a granola bar from her desk drawer. "Eat this. It's not a meal, but it's something." I took it because refusing would have been more suspicious. Shoved it in my pocket and fled to the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. She was going to call. She was going to find out Mom had left me alone. And then what? Foster care? I'd heard the stories. Kids who went into the system and never came back the same, or at all. That afternoon I walked home the long way, taking side streets and cutting through the park because I couldn't face the empty house yet. I ended up sitting on a bench near the playground, watching little kids shriek and chase each other while their parents stood nearby, vigilant and present. A woman sat down next to me. Older, maybe 70, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and warm brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She had a shopping bag from the corner store. "Waiting for someone, sweetheart?" she asked. I should have said yes and walked away. Instead I said, "Nah. Just thinking." Heavy thoughts for such a young person. She smiled, and it reminded me of my grandmother before she died. Genuine warmth with no agenda behind it. "I'm Mrs. Lopez. I live in the apartment building across the street. I think I've seen you around the neighborhood." "I'm Emma." "Well, Emma, I hope those heavy thoughts don't weigh you down too much." She stood up, adjusting her shopping bag. "If you ever need anything, I'm in apartment 3B. My door's always open for neighbors." She walked away before I could respond, and I sat there thinking about doors that were open versus the one I had to go home to. The one that would close behind me and lock me in with the silence and the empty cabinets and the growing certainty that something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. That night I made my first video. I propped my tablet up on the kitchen counter and hit record, not even sure what I was doing or why. I just knew I needed to say it out loud. Needed to make it real in a way that my notebook couldn't. "My name is Emma Foster," I said to the camera. "I'm 11 years old. My mom left me alone 6 days ago to go to France with her boyfriend. She gave me $50 and a debit card that doesn't work. The $50 is gone. And I haven't eaten a real meal in 4 days. I'm scared." My voice cracked on that last word. I'm really, really scared, and I don't know what to do. I stopped the recording and saved it with shaking hands. Then titled it Evidence 1 because that's what it felt like. Evidence that this happened. Evidence that I existed. Evidence that if something went wrong, someone would eventually know the truth. Day 7 arrived like a storm I'd been watching approach for days. I woke up so dizzy I could barely stand without holding onto furniture. I managed to make it to the kitchen and open the cabinet to find 1 pack of ramen, half a jar of peanut butter, and exactly 6 crackers. This was it. The end of the food. The real beginning of starvation. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and cried. Not the quiet, controlled crying I'd been doing at night. This was loud, gasping sobs that echoed through the empty house. I cried for my mother who wasn't coming back. I cried for the childhood that had ended the moment she walked out the door. I cried because I was 11 years old and I was going to have to figure out how to not die, and that wasn't fair. None of this was fair. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I froze, tears still wet on my face. Nobody ever came to our door. We didn't have friends over. Mom didn't like company. For a wild second I thought maybe it was her. That she'd come back early, and that this nightmare was finally over. I wiped my face on my sleeve and went to the door. Looking through the peephole. An older man stood on the porch. He was maybe 50, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt with a school lanyard around his neck. I recognized him. Mr. Baldwin, the school counselor. The one who called kids into his office when teachers were worried about them. My stomach dropped through the floor as he knocked again. Emma. It's Mr. Baldwin from school. Miss Patterson asked me to check on you. Is your mother home? I stood there with my hand on the doorknob, every instinct screaming at me to stay quiet, and pretend I wasn't here. If I opened this door, everything would change. The secret would be out. There would be consequences I couldn't predict or control. But I was so tired. So hungry. And so completely, devastatingly alone. I opened the door. Mr. Baldwin's face changed the second he saw me. His professional smile collapsed into raw concern, and I watched him do this mental calculation, his eyes scanning my face, my too big hoodie hanging off my shoulders, the dark circles I'd stopped trying to hide. Emma, he said carefully, like I was a small animal that might bolt. Can I come in? I stepped back, letting him cross the threshold into my disaster. He walked slowly through the entryway into the kitchen, and I saw our house through his eyes. The empty counters. The dishes I'd stopped washing because what was the point? The trash bag I'd been too weak to take outside, slumped by the door. He turned to face me, and his voice was gentle but inflexible. Where's your mother, Emma? Europe. She's in France with her boyfriend Richard. The words tumbled out flat and practiced. She'll be back soon. How soon? He asked. I didn't answer. Couldn't make my mouth form the number 30. Couldn't say out loud that she'd left me for a month because saying it made it sound way worse, like the kind of thing that got kids taken away. Mr. Baldwin walked to the cabinets and opened them one by one. The first one, empty except for old spices. The second, a can of tomato paste from 2019. The third, the ramen pack, the peanut butter, the crackers. He closed that cabinet very slowly, and when he turned back to me his jaw was tight. Emma, when did she leave? 7 days ago. My voice came out small. 7 days. He repeated it like he was testing the weight of the words. And she left you with what exactly? $50. I said truthfully, and a card, but it doesn't work because she never activated it. I don't know why I was being honest. Maybe because lying took energy I didn't have anymore. Or maybe because some part of me had opened that door knowing exactly what would happen next, and wanting it anyway. He pulled out his phone. Started typing. Is there another guardian? A father? Grandparents? Anyone who's supposed to be checking on you? My dad lives in Oregon with his new family. We don't really talk. I wrapped my arms around myself. I'm okay though. I can handle it. Mom said I was mature enough. You're 11 years old, Emma. The anger in his voice wasn't directed at me, but it still made me flinch. You're not supposed to handle being abandoned. The word abandoned made my heart ache. It hung in the air between us like smoke, and I couldn't breathe around it. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? It wasn't a test. Neither was it a lesson in independence. This was abandonment, plain and simple, dressed up by my mother in justifications about maturity and self-reliance. I'm calling Child Protective Services, Mr. Baldwin said, phone all ready to his ear. And I'm calling your neighbor. The one Miss Patterson mentioned seeing you talk to in the park yesterday. Mrs. Lopez. I asked in shock. But how did she know? Miss Patterson is thorough, he said with a smile before holding up one finger as someone answered. Yes, this is David Baldwin, school counselor at Riverside Middle School. I'm calling to report a case of child neglect. 11-year-old female, left alone for 7 days with inadequate food and no adult supervision. I stopped listening, slid down the wall until I was sitting on the kitchen floor again with knees pulled to my chest. This was really happening. The secret was exploding outward and I couldn't pull it back, couldn't contain it anymore. Mr. Baldwin made 3 more calls. Each one felt like watching a bomb timer tick down. When he finally put the phone away, he sat down on the floor across from me. Not on a chair where he'd be looking down. Right there on the dirty linoleum, meeting me at eye level. Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. Do you understand? I nodded, but I didn't believe him. If I'd been stronger, smarter, or more independent like Mom said, maybe I could have actually done this. Maybe I truly was the failure here. Mrs. Lopez is coming over. She's bringing food. And a woman from CPS named Ms. Reeves will be here within the hour to talk to you. He paused. I know this feels scary, but you're not in trouble. We're here to help. What about my mom? When she comes back and I'm not here, what happens then? Your mother left you without adequate food or supervision for over a week. When she comes back, she's going to have to answer for that. His voice was firm and final. But right now, we need to focus on you. The doorbell rang again. Mr. Baldwin stood up and I heard him open the door, then I heard Mrs. Lopez's voice saying, I knew it, I knew something was wrong. I should have come sooner. She rushed into the kitchen carrying 2 shopping bags that she set on the counter with more force than necessary. Then she was kneeling in front of me, her soft wrinkled hands cupping my face. Oh, you poor thing. Look at you. Just look at you. Her eyes were wet. When did you last eat? Really eat? I don't remember, I whispered. She stood up fast for someone her age, already pulling containers from the bags. I made caldo de pollo yesterday. My grandson didn't come for dinner so I have extra. You're going to eat, and then we're going to figure this out. The smell of chicken soup hit me and my stomach cramped so hard I doubled over. Mrs. Lopez had the bowl in front of me in seconds, pressing a spoon into my hand. Slowly, Emma. Take small bites or you'll get sick. I tried to follow her instructions. Took a tiny sip of broth and the warmth spreading through my chest felt like mercy. Like the first real thing I'd felt in a week. The second bite was bigger. The third bigger still. And then I was crying again, soup spilling off the spoon, because someone was feeding me and I hadn't realized how much I needed that. How much I needed someone to just take care of me without calling it a lesson in independence. Mrs. Lopez rubbed my back while I ate and cried. She didn't say anything. She just let me fall apart in the kitchen while Mr. Baldwin made quiet phone calls in the living room. I was halfway through the bowl when the third knock came. Ms. Reeves was younger than I expected. Maybe 30, with dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail and kind eyes that had probably seen too much. She had a laptop bag over one shoulder and a folder under her arm. Emma Foster. She set her things on the table. I'm Jennifer Reeves from Child Protective Services. I know this is overwhelming, but I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? I nodded, wiping soup from my chin. She sat down and opened the folder. I want you to tell me, in your own words, exactly what's been happening. Start from the day your mother left. So I did. I told her about the $50 and the useless debit card. About stretching meals across days. About the fear that lived in my chest like a stone. About falling asleep in class and Ms. Patterson's questions and the videos I'd been recording because I needed someone to know what was happening to me. Videos. Ms. Reeves repeated in surprise, leaning forward. You recorded yourself. On my tablet. I just needed proof. That this was real. That I wasn't making it up. I stood up on shaky legs and went to get it from the living room, where it was charging on the couch. Came back and pulled up the first video. We watched it together. All of us. Me at the kitchen counter saying I'm scared in a voice that cracked and broke. Ms. Reeves took notes. Mrs. Lopez's hand found mine and squeezed while Mr. Baldwin's jaw got tighter. Are there more? Ms. Reeves asked. For more. I replied. One for each day it got really bad. I need you to send those to me. All of them. She wrote down an email address. Emma, this is incredibly important evidence. You did exactly the right thing by documenting this. I also have a notebook. I got up again, retrieved it from my room, handed it to her with pages and pages of dates and times, as well as exactly how much food I had left, how I felt and what I was afraid of. My handwriting got shakier as the days progressed, letters slanting and cramping together as I got weaker. Ms. Reeves read through it slowly, her expression hardening with each page. When she finally looked up, she said, I'm going to be very direct with you, Emma. What your mother did is called neglect. It's illegal. You cannot stay in this house alone. Where will I go? I then asked. Tonight, you're going to stay with Mrs. Lopez if she's willing. Ms. Reeves looked at the older woman, who nodded immediately. Tomorrow, we'll have a better plan. But right now, I need you to pack a bag. Clothes for a few days. Anything important you don't want to leave behind. I left and went to my room in a daze. Pulled my backpack out and started throwing in clothes. Underwear. My toothbrush. The stuffed elephant I'd had since I was 3 that I definitely wasn't too old for. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip the bag. When I came back to the kitchen, Ms. Reeves was taking pictures. The empty cabinets. The notebook lying open on the table. The debit card I'd left on the counter. She photographed everything with clinical precision, and each flash felt like another nail in some invisible coffin. Emma, I need to ask you something difficult, Ms. Reeves said, lowering her camera. Has your mother done anything like this before? Left you alone for extended periods? Not this long. Sometimes overnight when she went out with Richard. But never more than one night. I hesitated. She always said I was too needy. That I needed to learn to be more independent. That when she was my age, she was basically raising herself. Your mother's childhood doesn't justify putting you in danger. Ms. Reeves closed her folder. I'm opening a formal investigation. I'll need to speak with your teachers, your neighbors, anyone who's been in contact with you during this time. And when your mother returns, I'll need to speak with her. I sighed loudly. She's going to be so angry. The words slipped out before I could stop them. At you. Ms. Reeves's voice sharpened. At everyone. I corrected. She doesn't like people interfering. She says it's nobody's business how she raises me. Emma, keeping a child safe is everyone's business. She stood up and put a hand on my shoulder. You were brave to let Mr. Baldwin in today. You probably saved your own life. But I didn't feel brave. Instead, I felt like a traitor. Like I'd just blown up my entire family for a bowl of soup and the promise of safety. A few minutes later, I got into Mrs. Lopez's ancient Honda and she drove me to her apartment. The car smelled like vanilla air freshener and old coffee, but somehow, I liked it. She lived 3 blocks away in a building I'd passed over 100 times without really seeing. 3rd floor, like she'd said. Apartment 3B. Her home was small but warm. Photographs covered every surface. Kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, she explained, while showing me to a spare bedroom that was clearly used for storage. She moved boxes with surprising speed, then made up the bed with sheets that smelled like lavender. You're safe here, sweetheart, she said, tucking the corners tight. Whatever happens next, you're safe tonight. That night I ate more food than I'd seen in a week. Mrs. Lopez made rice and beans and chicken, and kept refilling my plate even when I protested. She told me about her grandson who was studying engineering, her daughter who was a nurse in Phoenix, her husband who died 5 years ago and who she still talked to every morning over coffee. I helped her wash dishes. Sat on her couch watching a telenovela I didn't understand while she knitted and provided running commentary in both Spanish and English. It was normal. Aggressively. Beautifully normal. And I hadn't realized how much I'd missed normal until I was drowning in it. When I finally went to bed, I pulled out my tablet. Recorded one more video. Day 7, I said to the camera. Mr. Baldwin found out. CPS came. I'm staying with Mrs. Lopez now. I ate real food today. 3 meals. I forgot what that felt like. I paused, trying to organize the chaos in my head. I keep waiting to feel relieved, but mostly I just feel scared. Mom's going to come back and find out what I did, and she's going to hate me. But Ms. Reeves said I was brave. Mr. Baldwin said I did the right thing. I want to believe them. I'm trying to believe them. I saved it as evidence 5 and plugged the tablet in to charge. Then lay in the dark listening to Mrs. Lopez move around her apartment, the comforting sounds of another human being alive and present in the next room. And for the first time in 7 days, I fell asleep without crying. The next morning, Ms. Reeves came back with another woman she introduced as her supervisor. They had more questions. More forms. They took statements from Mrs. Lopez about what she'd observed. From Mr. Brooke, the corner store owner, who apparently remembered every time I'd come in counting coins for ramen. From Miss Patterson, who'd been documenting my declining state in her grade book. Everyone had noticed. Everyone had seen pieces of what was happening. But I'd been so good at deflecting, so practiced at lying, that no one had put it together until Mr. Baldwin showed up at my door. "We've been trying to contact your mother," Ms. Reeves said on day 9, sitting across from me at Mrs. Lopez's kitchen table. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. "We've even sent emails. But there has been no response whatsoever." I nodded in understanding. This wasn't the first time I'd tried to reach my mother and couldn't. She said she was going off-grid. I explained that the whole point of France was disconnecting from real life. I stirred my cereal, watching the milk swirl. She probably turned her phone off. "Do you know where exactly in France she is? Or what hotel she's staying at?" She didn't tell me. Just said she'd be in Paris and then the countryside. I looked up. She's supposed to be back in 3 weeks. Ms. Reeves exchanged a look with her supervisor. "Emma, we can't wait 3 weeks. We have evidence of neglect. We have your testimony, your videos, your notebook. We have witness statements. This is more than enough to move forward." "Move forward with what?" "With making sure you're protected. Which means when your mother does come back, she's going to face consequences." She softened her voice. "I know that's hard to hear. But Emma, as I said before, what she did wasn't okay. And it can't happen again." Over the next week, my life became a strange split screen. At school, I was just Emma again, sitting in class and doing homework while trying to pretend everything was normal. But after school, I was evidence. I was case files, and witness statements, and legal proceedings that I only half understood. Mrs. Lopez fed me. Made sure I did my homework. Walked me to school every morning and met me every afternoon. She never made me talk about it if I didn't want to. She just existed as this steady, reliable presence that expected nothing from me except that I show up and keep breathing. On day 16, Ms. Reeves called with news. "Your mother posted on her Instagram handle yesterday. We were able to track her location through the post. Turns out she's still in France, but she'll be returning next week. Earlier than planned." My stomach dropped. "Why earlier?" "We don't know. But Emma, when she gets back, we're going to be there. You won't be alone when you see her." Ms. Reeves paused. "I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to be difficult." Difficult didn't begin to cover it. The next few days crawled by with this awful anticipation building in my chest and the pit of my stomach. I had nightmares about Mom walking through Mrs. Lopez's door, her face twisted with fury, screaming about how I'd betrayed her. I woke up gasping, and Mrs. Lopez would come in with warm milk and sit with me until I calmed down. "She's going to hate me," I whispered one night. "Maybe," Mrs. Lopez said, which wasn't comforting until she continued. "But sweetheart, her hate is about her, not you. You told the truth. And the truth is never the wrong choice when it keeps you safe." Then, on day 17, my mother came home. If you're still watching this, I need you to stay until the end. Because what happened next changed everything, and you need to understand how the truth can be both a weapon and a shield. How sometimes the people who are supposed to love you can't see past their own selfishness. And how an 11-year-old girl with a notebook and a camera became impossible to ignore. My mother walked into Mrs. Lopez's apartment like she owned it, and the first words out of her mouth were, "What the hell is going on?" She looked tanned and well-rested. Her hair was highlighted, probably from some expensive salon in Paris. She wore a flowing white blouse and designer jeans, and she smelled like airport perfume and wine from the flight. Behind her stood Ms. Reeves, her supervisor Mr. Brooke from the corner store who'd closed up shop to be here, and Mr. Baldwin. They'd formed a wall between her and me, And I was grateful for it because seeing her face made my legs go weak. Miss Foster, Ms. Reeves said calmly. I'm Jennifer Reeves from Child Protective Services. We need to talk about your daughter. Mom's eyes finally found me, sitting on Mrs. Lopez's couch with my arms wrapped around my knees. Her expression cycled through confusion, anger, and something that might have been fear. Emma, what did you do? Not are you okay? Not I missed you. What did you do? Like this was somehow my fault. She survived, Mrs. Lopez said sharply, stepping between us. Which is more than you gave her the tools to do. Excuse me. Mom's voice went icy. I don't know who you are, but this is between me and my daughter. I'm the neighbor who fed your child when she was starving. I'm the person who gave her a safe place to sleep when you abandoned her. Mrs. Lopez didn't raise her voice, but every word landed like a slap. So no, Ms. Foster. This stopped being just between you and Emma the moment you left her to die. Die? Are you insane? I left her with money and an unactivated debit card, Mr. Baldwin interrupted. He held up the blue plastic card like evidence in a trial. This card has never been activated. Emma couldn't access any funds from it. The $50 you left lasted less than a week. Mom's face went pale. That's not right. I could have sworn I activated it. I meant to activate it. But you didn't. Ms. Reeves pulled out her folder, and I recognized my notebook inside it. My videos queued up on her tablet. All the evidence I'd collected without fully understanding why. Ms. Foster, your daughter was left alone for 17 days with inadequate food, no working emergency funds, and no adult supervision. She lost 7 pounds. She was so malnourished that when she finally got help, she vomited after her first real meal because her stomach couldn't handle it. I watched my mother's face as Ms. Reeves spoke. Watched her try to process this information, to reconcile the vacation she'd been on with the reality of what I'd lived through. For a second, I thought I saw genuine horror in her eyes. Genuine regret. Then she said, she's always been dramatic. Emma has a tendency to exaggerate. The room went silent immediately. Dramatic. Mr. Brooks spoke for the first time, his voice rough with disbelief. I watched this child come into my store 6 times in 1 week, counting quarters to buy ramen. I watched her get thinner every day. I asked if she was okay and she lied to protect you, and you're calling her dramatic. Emma. Mom called, ignoring everyone else, and focusing entirely on me. Tell them you're fine. And that this is all just a big misunderstanding, right? You were fine. I stared at her. This woman who'd given birth to me, who was supposed to protect me, who'd instead left me to prove some twisted point about independence. And I realized something in that moment. She actually believed it. She actually thought she'd done nothing wrong, that this was a learning experience gone slightly awry, not child neglect that could have killed me. No, I said quietly. What? Mom asked in sheer disbelief. No, Mom. I wasn't fine. I stood up, my legs steadier than I expected. I was terrified. And I was starving. I genuinely thought I was going to die in that house and nobody would find me until you came back and saw my body. Her face crumpled. Emma, don't be so dramatic. Show her the videos. I said, looking at Ms. Reeves. Please. Show her what I looked like. Ms. Reeves hesitated, then turned her tablet toward my mother. Pressed play on the first video. My voice filled the apartment, small and scared. My name is Emma Foster. I'm 11 years old. My mom left me alone 6 days ago. Mom watched. She had to watch because Ms. Reeves held the tablet steady and everyone was staring at her, waiting to see if she had any humanity left. The video progressed through each day. Day 3 Emma, still trying to be brave. Day 6 Emma, crying and admitting she was scared. Day 10 Emma, so weak she could barely hold the tablet steady. When the last video ended, Mom was crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she used when she wanted something. Her hands were shaking. I didn't know, she whispered. Emma, I swear I didn't know it would be like this. You're so mature, I thought you'd be okay. I'm 11. My voice came out stronger now. I'm 11 years old and you left me alone for a month. What did you think would happen? I thought you'd manage. I thought it would teach you self-reliance. She reached for me but I stepped back. Baby, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. But we can fix this. You can come home now and everything will go back to normal. No. Ms. Reeves closed her folder with a sharp snap. That's not how this works, Ms. Foster. We have documented evidence of severe neglect. Emma's testimony, her videos, her journal entries, as well as witness statements from multiple adults. This isn't going away because you're sorry. What are you saying? I'm saying that Emma will not be returning to your custody tonight. We have an emergency placement arranged. You'll be allowed supervised visits pending a full investigation and hearing. Mom's tears stopped. Her face went hard. You can't take my daughter from me. You took yourself from your daughter when you got on that plane to France. Mr. Baldwin's voice was quiet but cutting. What we're doing now is making sure she's safe. Emma. Mom's voice turned desperate. Tell them you want to come home with me. Tell them this is all a mistake. Everyone looked at me. The entire room holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd choose. And God, part of me wanted to do it. Wanted to say yes and make this all go away. To go back to our house and pretend none of this happened because that would be easier than this. Easier than standing here and watching my mother fall apart. But I remembered the hunger. The fear. And the cold certainty that I might die alone because she decided her vacation was more important than my life. I can't, I said, and my voice broke. Mom, I can't go back there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She looked at me like I'd stabbed her. You're choosing them over me? These strangers over your own mother? No. I'm choosing me. The words came out clear and final. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing to be safe. Mom lunged forward like she was going to grab me, pull me into a hug or shake me or something, but Mr. Baldwin and Mrs. Lopez both moved to block her. Ms. Reeves stepped between us, her hand held up in warning. Ms. Foster, I need you to step back. Right now. She's my daughter. Mom yelled. She's a child who was neglected and endangered under your care. Ms. Reeves's voice went hard as steel. And if you don't step back immediately, I will involve the police. Mom stepped back, but her eyes never left mine. This isn't over, Emma. Do you hear me? This isn't over. Actually, it is. Ms. Reeves pulled out a document from her folder. This is an emergency custody order signed by Judge Martinez 2 hours ago. Emma will be placed in temporary foster care while we conduct our investigation. You're required to attend parenting classes, undergo psychological evaluation, and all visits with Emma will be supervised by a court-appointed monitor. Foster care. Mom's voice went shrill. You're putting her in foster care? With strangers? I think you mean with people who will feed her, Mrs. Lopez said coldly. Which is more than you did. Mom turned on her. Who the hell do you think you are? You're just some random neighbor who saved your daughter's life while you were drinking wine in Paris. Mrs. Lopez didn't back down an inch. I've raised 4 children and 7 grandchildren, and not once did I leave any of them to starve. So yes, Ms. Foster. I think I have every right to stand here and tell you that you failed. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it, before looking around the room at all these people who'd come together to protect me, who'd seen what she'd done and decided it wasn't acceptable. She was outnumbered and she knew it. Fine, she said finally, voice dripping with bitterness. Take her. But when she realizes what a mistake this is, when she sees how hard life is without me, don't come crying to me. Get out. I said it so quietly that for a second I wasn't sure anyone heard me. Then louder, get out. Now. Ms. Reeves nodded to Mr. Baldwin, who walked Mom to the door. She turned back once, her face a mask of hurt and fury, and I waited for her to say something. An apology. A promise that she'd do better. Anything that showed she understood what she'd done. Instead she said, you'll regret this, Emma. When you're living with strangers and you realize what you gave up, you'll regret it. The door closed behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there shaking, adrenaline draining out of me so fast I felt dizzy. Mrs. Lopez caught me before I fell, guided me back to the couch. Someone pressed a glass of water into my hands. You did good, sweetheart, Mrs. Lopez whispered. You were so brave. But I didn't feel brave. I felt like I'd just blown up my entire life, and I had no idea what came next. Ms. Reeve sat down next to me. Emma, I know that was incredibly difficult. But you need to understand something. What you did today. Standing up for yourself, telling the truth, refusing to protect someone who hurt you. That takes more courage than most adults ever manage. She hates me now. Maybe. But maybe one day she'll understand that you forcing this confrontation was the only way to save both of you. Ms. Reeve squeezed my shoulder. Right now, though, we need to focus on you. I have a foster family ready. They're experienced, they're kind, and they're expecting you tonight. What if they're worse? The question slipped out before I could stop it. They won't be. I promise you, Emma. They won't be. The foster family lived in a house that looked normal from the outside. 2 stories, neat lawn, a basketball hoop over the garage. Ms. Reeves walked me to the door and rang the bell. A woman answered. Mid-40s, warm smile, wearing jeans and a sweater. You must be Emma. I'm Caroline. Come in, sweetheart. Her husband appeared behind her, a tall man with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. I'm James. We're glad you're here, Emma. They showed me to a bedroom that was clearly set up for foster kids. Neutral walls, a comfortable bed, a desk with school supplies already arranged. It was impersonal, but clean and safe, and most importantly, it was mine, at least for now. Dinner's in an hour, Caroline said. Spaghetti and meatballs. There's also salad and garlic bread. You can eat as much or as little as you want. No one will judge you either way. That last sentence made my throat tight. She knew. They knew what had happened to me, knew about the hunger and the fear, and they were telling me I was allowed to eat without shame. Thank you, I managed. After they left, I sat on the bed and looked around this strange room that was supposed to be safe. Pulled out my tablet and recorded one more video. Day 17. I saw my mom today. I told her the truth and she hates me for it. My voice was steady, which surprised me. Ms. Reeve says I'm going to stay with a foster family for a while. They seem nice. Their house smells like cookies. I don't know what happens next, but I know I'm not going back to that empty house. I'm not going back to being alone. I saved it as evidence 6 and put the tablet away. Dinner was surreal. Caroline and James had 2 other kids, both teenagers who were apparently their biological children. They included me in conversation without forcing it, asked about school and books and TV shows I liked. They didn't ask about my mom or what happened or why I was there. Just treated me like a normal kid at a normal dinner table. I ate 3 meatballs, a full plate of spaghetti, 2 pieces of garlic bread. When I was done, Caroline asked if I wanted seconds. I shook my head, too full to manage another bite, and she just smiled. There's always more if you get hungry later. The kitchen's always open. That night I lay in bed in a stranger's house and waited to feel scared. But instead I just felt tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. Like I'd been running for 17 days and finally stopped moving. The next morning, Ms. Reeves called to tell me about the hearing scheduled for next week. The investigation was proceeding. They'd interviewed everyone who'd had contact with me during those 17 days. Built a case file that was apparently damning. Your mother hired a lawyer, Ms. Reeves said. His arguing that this was a mistake in judgment, not criminal neglect. That you were more capable than most 11-year-olds and she genuinely believed you could handle it. Will that work? I found myself asking. Not with the evidence we have. Not with your videos and your journal and the witness testimonies. She paused. Emma, I need to prepare you. Your mother is going to fight this. She's going to try to make it seem like you're lying, or exaggerating. Her lawyer might even try to paint you as manipulative or dramatic. Let them try. I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. Luckily I have proof. I documented everything. Yes, you did. And honestly, that's going to make all the difference. The hearing was set for Friday. 5 days away. 5 days of living in Caroline and James's house, going to school like everything was normal, coming home to dinner and homework help and the bizarre comfort of routine. Mrs. Lopez visited twice, bringing me homemade cookies and updates on the neighborhood. She told me Mr. Brooke was asking about me, that Ms. Patterson was proud of me, that everyone who'd been part of saving me wanted me to know they were still there. You're not alone, sweetheart, she said on her second visit. even if it feels that way sometimes. You have people now. People who care. On Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. Lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about tomorrow. About facing my mother again in a courtroom. About having to tell my story to a judge while she sat there watching, probably hating me more with every word. Caroline knocked softly and came in without waiting for an answer. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. I shook my head. She sat on the edge of the bed. "Tomorrow's going to be hard. But James and I will be there. Ms. Reeves will be there." Even Mrs. Lopez asked if she could come, and the judge approved it. "You won't be alone in that room." But what if the judge doesn't believe me? I found myself saying, "The judge will believe the evidence." And Emma. She looked at me seriously. "Even if the worst happens, even if something goes wrong tomorrow, you still did the right thing. You still saved yourself. Nobody can take that away from you." Friday morning arrived with grey skies and cold wind that felt appropriate for what was coming. I dressed in the nice clothes Caroline had bought me. Khakis and a blue sweater that made me look younger than 11, which Ms. Reeves said was actually helpful. We wanted the judge to see me as a child, not as the independent almost adult my mother kept insisting I was. The courthouse was huge and intimidating. Stone columns and marble floors and people in suits walking with purpose. Ms. Reeves met us in the lobby with her supervisor and Mr. Baldwin. Mrs. Lopez was already there, wearing her best dress and clutching her purse like a shield. "Are you ready?" Ms. Reeves asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't. We walked into the courtroom, and there she was. My mother, sitting at a table with a man in an expensive suit who had to be her lawyer. She looked smaller somehow. Scared. When our eyes met across the room, I saw her flinch. Judge Martinez was an older woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She called the room to order and the hearing began. My mother's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a single mother trying her best, a daughter who was unusually mature and capable, a trip that was meant to be temporary and was shortened when concerns arose. He made it sound reasonable. Almost logical. Then Ms. Reeves stood up, and everything changed. She presented my notebook. My videos. The photographs of empty cabinets and the inactivated debit card. Witness statements from Mr. Brooke, Ms. Patterson, Mr. Baldwin, and Mrs. Lopez. She built a timeline of neglect so detailed and damning that by the time she finished, my mother's lawyer looked pale. "And finally, Your Honor," Ms. Reeves said, "I'd like for Emma to speak." The judge looked at me. "Emma Foster, would you like to tell me what happened in your own words?" I stood up on shaking legs, walked to the front of the courtroom, and told the truth. I stood in front of Judge Martinez and every eye in that courtroom was on me. My mother's lawyer had this smug expression like he was about to watch a child crumble under pressure. My mother sat frozen, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. Ms. Reeves gave me an encouraging nod. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Take your time, Emma. Tell me what happened starting from the day your mother left." "She didn't just leave," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "She announced it that morning while I was eating breakfast. Said she was going to France with her boyfriend Richard for a month and that I was mature enough to handle being alone." "Did she make arrangements for your care? Ask a neighbor to check on you? Or at least leave emergency contact information?" "No, Your Honor. She gave me $50 cash and a debit card. Then told me not to use the card unless it was an emergency. She said there was plenty of food in the pantry and that I should figure it out." I paused, remembering that morning. She said this would be good for me. That I needed to learn independence. "And the debit card?" The judge glanced at the evidence table where the blue plastic card sat in a clear bag. "It never worked. I tried using it on day 2 when I needed milk. But the cashier at the corner store said it wasn't activated. When I got home, I found the activation paperwork in a drawer. She never sent it in." My mother's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client has stated that she believes she had activated the card. This was an oversight, not intentional neglect." Judge Martinez held up one hand. "Mr. Peterson, you'll have your chance to speak. Right now, I'm listening to Emma." She turned back to me. "Continue, please." The $50 ran out after 6 days. I was buying the cheapest food I could find. Ramen for 39 cents. White bread. Peanut butter. I was making one meal last the entire day because I didn't know when I'd have money for more. My throat got tight but I pushed through. By day 5, I started keeping a notebook. Writing down everything I ate, how I felt, and what was happening. I didn't really know why at first. I just felt I needed to document it. Sort of like I needed proof that this whole thing was actually real. Why did you feel you needed proof, Emma? The question caught me off guard. I looked at my mother, who was staring at the table in front of her. Because Mom always said I was dramatic. That I exaggerated things. I was scared that if I told someone what was happening, they wouldn't believe me. Or worse, that they'd believe her when she said I was being overdramatic about a little independence. Judge Martinez made a note. Tell me about the videos. I started recording myself on day 1. Just talking to the camera about what was happening. How I felt. What I was scared of. I swallowed hard. I thought maybe if something happened to me, that if I died or got really sick, someone would find the videos and know what really happened. That she'd left me alone and I didn't make it up. You thought you might die? Judge Martinez asked in horror. Yes, Your Honor. The words came out as a whisper. By day 6, I was so dizzy I could barely stand. I was cold all the time even though it was warm outside. I knew something was wrong with me but I didn't know what to do about it. Then why didn't you call for help? Call 911 or reach out to a neighbor? This was the question I'd been dreading. The one that made me sound complicit in my own suffering. Because Mom always said we handle our problems ourselves. And that asking for help was weakness. And because I had to force the next words out. Because part of me thought maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe if I was stronger, or smarter, or more independent like she said, I could actually do this. The judge's expression softened. Emma, you're 11 years old. No 11-year-old should be expected to survive alone for weeks with minimal resources. That's not a test of independence. That's neglect. I know that now. I looked at my mother directly. But I didn't know it then. I thought I was failing her test. I thought if I could just make it to 30 days, she'd come back and be proud of me and everything would be worth it. My mother's face crumpled. She started to say something but her lawyer put a hand on her arm, shaking his head sharply. Judge Martinez continued. Tell me about the day Mr. Baldwin came to your house. It was day 7. I'd run out of food that morning. All I had left was 1 pack of ramen and half a jar of peanut butter. I was sitting on the kitchen floor crying when he rang the doorbell. I closed my eyes, remembering as I spoke. I knew if I opened the door, everything would change. The secret would be out. But I was so tired and so hungry and so scared that I couldn't keep pretending anymore. So I let him in. And he immediately contacted Child Protective Services, the judge asked. Yes. And Mrs. Lopez, my neighbor. She came over with soup and I ate it so fast I got sick. My stomach couldn't handle real food anymore. I wiped at my eyes, frustrated by the tears. Ms. Reeves took pictures of everything. The empty cabinets. My notebook. She had me send her all the videos. Everyone kept saying I did the right thing by documenting everything, but it didn't feel right. It felt like I was betraying my mom. Do you still feel that way? I thought about the question carefully. No, Your Honor. Now I understand that telling the truth isn't betrayal. My mom betrayed me when she left me alone to starve. I was just trying to survive. Judge Martinez nodded slowly. One final question. Emma, if I were to send you back to your mother's house today, how would you feel? The question hung in the air like smoke. My mother looked up sharply, hope flashing across her face. Ms. Reeves tensed beside me. Terrified, I said honestly. Because I don't trust her anymore. She looked me in the eye and said this would be good for me, then left me with nothing. She chose her vacation over my life. And when she came back and saw what happened, she called me dramatic. She said I was exaggerating. My voice rose. I lost 7 pounds in 2 weeks. I have videos of myself begging for someone to find me. How is that exaggerating, Mom? Thank you, Emma. You can sit down. I walked back to my seat on shaking legs. Mrs. Lopez reached over and squeezed my hand. Caroline, sitting in the row behind us, leaned forward and whispered, "You did beautifully." My mother's lawyer stood up again. Your Honor, my client deeply regrets her error in judgment. She has enrolled in parenting classes and has begun therapy to address her decision-making. She loves her daughter and wants nothing more than to rebuild their relationship. Mr. Peterson, Judge Martinez said dryly, love without responsibility is not enough to keep a child safe. Your client can love her daughter all she wants, but that doesn't change the fact that she left an 11-year-old alone for more than 2 weeks with inadequate food and no emergency support system. Your Honor, we're asking for reunification with supervised visits initially, progressing to unsupervised as my client completes her requirements. Noted. The judge turned to Ms. Reeves. What is CPS recommending? Ms. Reeves stood. We recommend Emma remain in foster care for a minimum of 6 months while Ms. Foster completes parenting classes, undergoes psychological evaluation, and demonstrates sustained behavior change. We recommend supervised visits only, with frequency to be determined based on Emma's comfort level and therapeutic progress. And what does Emma want? Everyone looked at me again. Ms. Reeves had prepared me for this question, but actually answering it in front of my mother was different. I want to feel safe, I said quietly. I want to know that if I go home, there will be food in the cabinets. That I won't be left alone. And that my mom understands what she did wrong and won't do it again. I looked at my mother. But right now, I don't trust that. So I want to stay where I am until I can trust her again. If I ever can. I watched my mother break. Completely falling apart, sobbing into her hands while her lawyer tried to comfort her. Part of me wanted to run to her, to take it all back and make her stop crying. But I stayed in my seat because her tears didn't change what happened. It didn't erase the hunger or the fear or the 17 days of wondering if I'd survive. Judge Martinez let the courtroom settle before she spoke. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. The videos, the journal entries, the photographs, the witness testimonies. I've heard from Emma herself about her experience. And I have to say, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of child neglect I've seen in my 20 years on the bench. My mother's lawyer started to object, but the judge cut him off. Ms. Foster, I don't doubt that you love your daughter. But love is not enough when you fail in your most basic duty as a parent, which is to keep your child safe. You left an 11-year-old alone for over 2 weeks with $50 and no working emergency funds. You didn't arrange for anyone to check on her. You didn't leave emergency contact information. You made yourself unreachable. And when confronted with the consequences of your actions, your first response was to call your daughter dramatic. The judge's voice was steel. That is not acceptable. That will never be acceptable. She consulted her notes. Emma will remain in foster care for a minimum of 6 months. During that time, Ms. Foster, you will complete court-mandated parenting classes, undergo psychological evaluation, and participate in family therapy with Emma if and when Emma agrees to it. Visits will be supervised by a court-appointed monitor for the first 3 months, frequency to start at once per week. After 3 months, we'll reassess based on your progress and Emma's well-being. Your Honor, my mother tried to speak. I'm not finished. Judge Martinez's tone left no room for argument. If you complete all requirements satisfactorily and Emma feels safe doing so, we can begin discussing reunification after the 6-month period. But understand this clearly, Ms. Foster. One more incident of neglect, one more failure to prioritize your daughter's safety and well-being, and you will lose custody permanently. Do you understand? My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. This hearing is adjourned. Emma, I wish you the very best. You showed remarkable courage today. The judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack that felt like punctuation on the end of my old life. Outside the courtroom, Mrs. Lopez pulled me into a hug that smelled like her vanilla perfume. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. So very proud. Mr. Baldwin shook my hand like I was an adult. You probably don't realize this yet, Emma, but what you did today is going to help other kids. Your evidence, your testimony, it's all going to be used as a teaching case. You showed that children's voices matter. Ms. Reeves walked me to Caroline and James's car. How are you feeling? Tired, I admitted. And sad. I got what I wanted, but I'm still sad. Is that weird? Not weird at all. You can be relieved and sad at the same time. You can know you did the right thing and still grieve the relationship you wish you had with your mother. She squeezed my shoulder. That's called being brave, Emma. Over the next few months, my life found a rhythm. School, therapy, dinner with Caroline and James and their kids. Mrs. Lopez visited every Sunday with home-cooked meals and stories about her grandchildren. Mr. Brooke let me help at the corner store on Saturday mornings, teaching me about inventory and customer service. Ms. Patterson checked in regularly, celebrating when my grades improved. The supervised visits with my mother were awkward at first. We sat in a small room at the CPS office with a monitor taking notes in the corner. Mom tried too hard, bringing gifts and talking too much. I mostly just sat there, not sure what to say to this woman who'd given birth to me but felt like a stranger. By the third visit, she'd stopped bringing gifts. Just showed up and said, "I'm sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry." I'd look at her and say, "I know." And I did. I could see it in her face, the genuine remorse mixed with confusion about how everything had gone so horribly wrong. The therapist says I have control issues, and that I was trying to prove something by leaving you alone. Prove that you didn't need me, maybe. Or that I didn't need to be needed. She laughed bitterly. Stupid, right? Yeah, I agreed. Really stupid. She flinched but nodded. I promise I'm working on it. The parenting classes, the therapy. I'm trying to understand why I thought any of this was okay. I sighed heavily. Do you? Understand, I mean. I'm starting to. She looked at me directly. My mother left me alone a lot when I was your age. And I survived. So I thought that made it okay to do the same to you. But the therapist says just because I survived doesn't mean it wasn't neglect. Doesn't mean it didn't hurt me. And repeating the cycle doesn't make it right. It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in years. By month 4, visits moved to twice a week. By month 5, we were having actual conversations instead of stiff exchanges. She told me about the parenting classes, about learning that independence comes in stages, and not all at once through some trial by fire. I told her about school, about my new friends, about how Caroline was teaching me to bake. Do you think you'll ever come home? She asked during month 6. I'd been dreading that question. I don't know, Mom. Maybe someday. But not yet. Because you still don't trust me. Because I'm still learning how to trust myself, I corrected. Learning to trust my own judgment about what's safe and what's not. And right now, where I am is safe. She nodded, and I could see it hurt her. But she didn't argue or try to change my mind. She just said, I understand. The 6-month review hearing was shorter than the first one. Judge Martinez reviewed reports from my therapist, my mother's therapist, the parenting class instructor, the visit supervisor. She asked me how I felt. Better, I said. Safer. Mom's making progress and I can see she's trying. But I'm not ready to go back yet. What would make you ready? I thought about it carefully. Time. I need more time to see if the changes stick. More time to heal. More time to be just a kid without having to worry about surviving. Judge Martinez extended the foster care placement for another 6 months with increased visitation. But unsupervised visits could begin after month 8 if everyone agreed. The goal was still eventual reunification, but only if and when I felt safe. My mother accepted the decision without fighting. I think that's what surprised me most. Surprised everyone really. The old mom would have argued, insisted, made it about her. This version just said, whatever Emma needs. I kept the notebook. Added to it occasionally, documenting the good days now instead of the bad ones. Day 243, helped Mrs. Lopez make tamales. My hands hurt from wrapping but it was fun. Day 287, Mom's visit went well. We laughed about something stupid and it felt normal. The videos stayed saved on my tablet. Evidence that became testimony that became justice. Sometimes I watched them, reminding myself of where I'd been and how far I'd come. Other times I couldn't bear to see that scared, hungry girl who thought she had to survive alone. On the 1-year anniversary of the day my mother left, I recorded one final video. My name is Emma Foster. I'm 12 years old now. A year ago, my mother left me alone for 17 days and I almost didn't survive. But I did, because I documented what was happening. Because I told the truth even when it was hard. Because people I barely knew saw me suffering and decided to help. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I'm making this video for any kid who's going through something similar. Who's being told that neglect is independence, that suffering is character building, that asking for help is weakness. I want you to know that's all lies. Independence comes from knowing you have support to fall back on. Character comes from being loved and safe. And asking for help is the bravest thing you can do. I looked directly at the camera. Document everything. Keep a journal. Record videos. Save text messages. Take pictures. Because truth is power, and your truth matters. Your safety matters. Your life matters more than anyone's comfort, reputation, or pride. If you're scared right now, if you're hungry or alone or being hurt, please tell someone. A teacher, a counselor, a neighbor, anyone. Keep telling until someone listens. Because you deserve to be safe. You deserve to be fed, cared for, and protected. That's not asking too much. That's the bare minimum every child deserves. I smiled slightly. It's been a year. I'm still in foster care, but I'm safe. I'm healthy. I'm healing. My relationship with my mom is complicated, but we're working on it. And none of that would have happened if I hadn't found the courage to open that door when Mr. Baldwin knocked. So if you're that kid right now, the one counting days until a parent comes back, the one rationing food and pretending everything's fine, please don't wait as long as I did. Open the door. Tell the truth. Save yourself. You're worth saving. I ended the recording and saved it. Not as evidence this time, but as a testimony. As proof that survival is possible. That life continues after trauma. That 11-year-old girls with notebooks and cameras can change their own stories. 2 years after everything happened, my mother and I sat across from each other at a coffee shop. Not supervised or court-mandated. Just us, trying to rebuild something that had been broken and might never be completely fixed but could still be something real. I've been thinking about what to say to you, she started. How to explain what I did in a way that makes sense. But the truth is, there's no explanation that makes it okay. I was selfish. I was repeating my own trauma. I was a bad mother. You were a bad mother then, I corrected. You're trying to be better now. So am I better? I considered it. Honestly. Yeah, Mom. You are. It's slow and it's hard and sometimes you still mess up. But you're trying. That counts for something. She cried. Not the manipulative tears from before, but quiet, genuine grief for what she'd done and what we'd lost. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I don't know. Maybe. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. But I think the more important question is whether you've forgiven yourself. She looked startled. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not. But hating yourself forever doesn't undo what happened. It just means we both stay stuck there, in that house, in those 17 days. I met her eyes. I'm trying to move forward. If you want any kind of relationship with me, you need to move forward too. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the way she wanted. But it was honest. It was real. And best of all, it was the beginning of something that might someday look like healing. A year later, I stood in front of a high school auditorium full of social workers, teachers, and child welfare advocates. Ms. Reeves had asked me to speak at a conference about child neglect. To tell my story to people who worked with kids like me every day. I was 15 now. Taller. Stronger. Still living with Caroline and James, though my mom and I had regular visits. Still going to therapy. Still carrying notebooks everywhere I went, documenting my life not as evidence but as practice. My name is Emma Foster, I said into the microphone. And I'm going to tell you about the power of documentation, the importance of believing children, and why truth is the most powerful tool a kid has when the adults who are supposed to protect them fail. I told them everything. The $50. The unactivated card. The hunger, and fear, and desperate videos. The notebook that saved my life. Mr. Baldwin's intervention. Mrs. Lopez's amazing chicken soup. Judge Martinez's ruling. A lot of adults ask me why I didn't call for help sooner, I said. Why I waited until I was nearly starving before I let anyone know what was happening. And the answer is complicated, but it comes down to this. Children are taught to trust their parents. To believe that what their parents do is normal and right. So when your parent tells you that being left alone is a test of maturity, you believe them. You think it's your job to pass the test. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. What I needed was for the adults around me to see what was happening and intervene before it got that bad. And some of them did. Miss Patterson noticed I was falling asleep in class. Mr. Brooks saw me counting quarters for ramen. Mrs. Lopez observed that something was wrong. But I'd gotten so good at lying, at protecting my mother's secret, that it took Mr. Baldwin actually coming to my house to break through my defenses. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong with a kid. Don't accept I'm fine at face value. Dig deeper. Ask harder questions. And when a child finally tells you the truth, believe them immediately and completely. Don't wait for it to get worse. Act. The applause when I finished was loud and long. Afterward, people came up to thank me, to tell me about cases where documentation had made the difference, to share their own stories of childhood neglect and survival. One woman, a teacher, grabbed my hands. I have a student right now who reminds me of you. Always tired, always turning down lunch. I've been worried, but I wasn't sure if I was overreacting. After hearing your story, I'm calling CPS on Monday. Good, I said firmly. Trust your gut. That kid might need you to trust your gut. That night, Caroline made my favorite dinner. Chicken parmesan with pasta and the garlic bread that had become our family tradition. James's kids, my foster siblings who I'd come to love, argued good-naturedly about whose turn it was to do dishes. Mrs. Lopez had come over with flan for dessert. This was family. Not the one I'd been born into, but the one I'd built through survival and truth-telling and the kindness of people who decided I was worth saving. My mother called later that evening. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. School and work and the weather. It was nice. Comfortable in a way that had taken years to achieve. I watched your speech, she said before we hung up. Someone posted it online. Emma, you were amazing. Thanks, Mom. I smiled. I'm proud of you. I know I don't have the right to be, but I am. You have the right, I said quietly. You're working on being better. That gives you the right to be proud. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not in a notebook this time, but in a document I was creating for other kids. A guide called How to Document Neglect and Abuse, a survival toolkit for kids who need proof. Because my story wasn't unique. There were thousands of kids out there right now, hungry and scared and alone, being told their suffering was normal. Being gaslit into thinking they were dramatic or needy or weak. And they needed to know that documentation was power. That truth was a weapon they could wield against people who were supposed to love them but didn't know how. I wrote about keeping journals with dates and times. About recording videos. About saving text messages and emails. About taking pictures of empty refrigerators and bruises and broken doors. About the importance of having evidence that couldn't be explained away or dismissed as exaggeration. I wrote about who to tell. Teachers, counselors, coaches, neighbors, friends' parents, anyone who was a mandated reporter. I wrote about what to do if the first person didn't believe you. Tell someone else. Keep telling until someone listens. I wrote about the aftermath. The foster care system. The court hearings. The therapy. The long, slow process of healing from neglect that looked like love. And at the end, I wrote this. If you're reading this, you're probably scared. You're probably alone. You might be hungry or hurt or so tired you can barely think straight. You might be wondering if what's happening to you is normal. If maybe you're just being dramatic like they say you are. Let me be clear. What's happening to you is not normal. You're not being dramatic. You deserve safety and food and shelter and love without conditions. You deserve to be a kid without having to survive like an adult. Document everything. Tell someone. Keep telling until someone helps. Your truth matters. Your safety matters. You matter. And one day, when you're safe and fed and healing, you'll look back at who you were in this moment and you'll be so proud of yourself for surviving. For fighting. For refusing to accept that neglect was normal. You are worth saving. Please save yourself. I posted the guide online that night. Within a week, it had been shared thousands of times. Within a month, I was getting messages from kids all over the country telling me they'd used it to document their own situations. That they'd gotten help. That they were safe now. And I realized that this was my purpose. Not just surviving, but making sure other kids knew they could survive too. That documentation was power. That truth was protection. that 11-year-old girls with notebooks and courage could save themselves and inspire others to do the same. My name is Emma Foster. I'm 14 years old. 3 years ago, my mother left me alone to starve while she vacationed in France, and I documented my way to survival. This is my story. But more importantly, it's a blueprint for any kid who needs to know that they're not alone, that help is possible, and that their truth can set them free. If my story helped you in any way, please share it. Not for me, but for the next kid who needs to know that survival is possible. That documentation saves lives. That telling the truth, even when it's terrifying, is always worth it. And if you're that kid right now, the one who's scared and hungry and wondering if anyone will ever believe you, please hear this: I believe you. Your truth matters. And you deserve so much better than what you're getting. Document everything. Tell someone. Save yourself. You're worth it. Thank you, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have a great day.